All right, everyone, it's time for a little bit more in-depth analysis about the decision in the Second Circuit about Twitter, about Trump being able to block people. Because it had already been found, I think, before. This was an upholding of the initial decision that showed that Trump couldn't block people. His Twitter is essentially a public platform. As a public official, he does not have the right to block people from interacting directly with his content. Now there's a lawsuit against Cortez. And it uses this as a precedent, says, well, we've been blocked by this public official, why should that be any different? For legal purposes, I can't think of any argument that could possibly be made by any taxpayer-funded US-based public official. I can't think of any argument that would pass constitutional muster, by which the president would not be able to block people, but other officials in the legislature, judiciary, whatever would. And this goes further than that. What about people? What about contractors? Well, it's not clear they'd be able to block people either. It's not clear that any corporation that takes grants, that takes taxpayer money or contracts of some sort would be able to either. Again, you're getting into a very, very tangled knot of spaghetti style thing of laws and legalese here. It's not entirely clear how to play out, but here's the precedent I would think that it sets. If the importance is that a person, a U.S. citizen, equal protection under the law, First Amendment as well. This is more about equal protection than it is the First Amendment, by the way. The court very visibly said it's not about this is not to in any way talk about corporations having to respect the First Amendment. Yeah, but it does talk about equal protection in the implicit sense. It's basically the point. That is, here's the thing. If a public official can't block you from interacting with that content, the importance isn't the public official, it's your interaction with the content that is of import, I would think, under that decision, under the auspices of it. If that's the case, why would a corporation be able to block you from doing so? For example, you have the right to petition the government to address their grievances. Does a private developer that owns the sidewalk outside of the courthouse have the right to prevent you from picketing out in front of the courthouse? No. They don't have the right. You've already had existing decisions related to company towns especially. Company town, an entire town is built by a corporation around a factory or something. They build the houses, they build the roads, they build the sidewalks, they put in the traffic lights, they put in the parking meters, they built the theater, they built the school. Everything is privatized. They still do not have the right to take people from within that community or, for the most part, without that community and prevent them from utilizing what are essentially public works because they have been structured in such a way that they are intrinsically necessary to be used in that manner. This is why, for instance, let's say the Automotive Association, people in all of these automotive groups were to say, well, you don't have a right to buy, we think you're a Nazi, we're not selling you a car, and they all sort of band together and refuse to allow you to lease one of their vehicles. It would be discriminatory, it would be unconstitutional. Because the roads are you need that transit. You need to be able to use a car in order to actually make use of those roads. It would be unconstitutional. It would be found that way. Kind of a stretch of the analogy, but sort of fits in there. In my mind, what this sets as a precedent is, first step, other public officials will be found also not able to block. Secondly, eventually corporations that platform, which is what Twitter does explicitly, will also not be able to prevent you from interacting with that content. And it'll be further than just Trump and AOC and stuff. If you can't interact with other people on that content within the context of those now public platforms, are you not being discriminated against if you're a U.S. user? Of course you are. Well, then these are public platforms. They're going to be found to be, if they don't differentiate and say we're publishers. Twitter can't label itself a publisher. There's no legitimate way it could do that and still exist as a site. They're fucked. Jack Dorsey is fucked as far as wanting to control public discourse. The only one there that I guess would have any capability would be Google, and that's only if they split up and YouTube became a public platform or something, I would think. Like their search, they could say, well, our search is a publisher, and we can block whatever search results and manipulate them all we want. Oh, okay. Yeah, all right. Well, you're liable for what do you aggregate there. Good luck considering the amount of stuff posted every day on the internet, but you can try that if you want to. That's why they're delving into AI so much. Google is way out ahead of the other companies in setting itself up to be able to continue to manipulate discourse because they're the ones most heavily invested in AI programming. That's really what that's about. They're making a good decision from a fiscal perspective. Not so much from a constitutional perspective or an ethical one. Not so much from a public relations perspective, I would say, either, if they ever fully implement that, but That's just my feeling. Amazon in number 2 slot and Apple way out in third. Facebook and Twitter nowhere to be seen. Twitter especially, like they're fucked. Jack Dorsey is screwed. But Trump can't block Twitter users. This is a good thing, by the way. The fact that the Trump administration lost this case is actually very good. Yeah, the Trump administration shouldn't have even argued. They should have said, oh, okay, yeah. By the way, they should have sided with the plaintiffs in these other cases and said, well, we can't block anyone. Yeah, the Constitution's a great thing. Why should Cortez be able to block her critics? If I were a politician right now, I would be going through and unblocking anyone that I knew to be a U.S. citizen. Of course, somebody from another country, that's a totally different story. Now, apparently he can still mute people. I don't know exactly how that sort of hybrid system works. Muting is a weird thing on websites. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Is it just so that you don't see what they're posting and so you don't have to interact with it? Or is it like, you can't block them from interacting so you can't prevent other people from seeing it? Like, for instance, so now I can shitpost on Trump's tweets and nobody can do anything about it. There will come a time, because of the precedent I believe that this is likely to set, there will probably come a time in which Twitter itself is no longer able to block people from interacting with content freely. At least U.S. citizens within the context of U.S. officials, groups, and firms, and so forth. Twitter itself, by the way, takes taxpayer subsidies. They're a Silicon Valley group. They take tax benefits in the state of California. They get taxpayer money. They shouldn't block anyone. They're a public platform. They should be seen as partially publicly owned. Same with Facebook, same with Google, same with all of these groups. They shouldn't be able to censor anything unless it's non-conformant to U.S. law or it's disruptive to a significant degree. Like spam is a gray area, but we should make spam illegal. I'll tell you why. Because otherwise someone could say, well, I'm allowed to shitpost the same thing over and over again and disrupt other people. It's sort of like taking a bullhorn to someone else's pulpit. You're being distracting. You're not actually expressing yourself. You're preventing others from doing so. That should not be legal. That way we can start arresting people that show up at rallies trying to disrupt them. Yeah, it shouldn't be allowed. People have a right to set up their venue and they have a right to communicate with those who voluntarily want to associate with that material. The other person, if they don't like it, they can set up a counter rally or something like that. They can pick it outside of the venue. Let them do that. That's about all. Peace out.